And here we go.
Hi, Alana.
Hey, Josh. All right, well, let's go ahead and get this thing started off. Everybody, welcome back to our virtual career day series. My name is Alana Hosey, and I am a registered interior designer coming to you live from here in our Dallas office at HKS, one of the world's premier architecture firms. If this is your first time joining us, our Career Day series intends to introduce students and young professionals to all of the people it takes to create the built environment around us. At HKS, we design everything from stadiums to skyscrapers, hotels to hospitals. And we have over 1,000 people from all industries, architects, engineers, accountants, and even anthropologists, and everything in between. There's a place for everyone here. So, this is actually season 2 of the series, and if you have a chance, go back and check out the interviews from last year. My personal favorite was our architectural photographer, Daryl. Super fun interview. But this series was so popular that they've decided to bring back the format to tell more stories and introduce even more of you to possibilities in the industry. So, as you're watching, please feel free to throw any questions you might have for Josh or myself in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer them in real time for you. So if you're familiar with last year's videos, then you may recognize this week's guest, architect Josh Walker. He was our host last year, so we invited him to come back this year and tell us a bit about his story, including how to pick colleges, how he got into designing schools, and how he passes his experience on to the next generation. So Josh, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Alana.
So, as you all know, you started every video last year with the same question. So I'll give you a chance to finally answer it for yourself. If you go back to your high school days, what did you think your career would be? And at what point did you discover architecture?
So I actually discovered architecture, and last year the answers were about 50-50 on this one. I'm on the half that discovered it real early and decided that's what they wanted to do for the rest of their lives.
Nice.
So it was middle school for me. I took a survey, and my top 3 career recommendations were architect, landscape architect, and marine architect. I was like, well, I guess I'm sold.
Yeah, you got to do it.
But in high school, I thought I was going to be designing skyscrapers. I thought I would be working out in the Middle East or China, designing the super tall buildings that look like they come out of a sci-fi novel.
Yeah.
And obviously that didn't pan out, but I was very happy with where I landed.
Nice. So you knew you wanted to be an architect so early. I think a lot of, especially our high school viewers watching, would like to know, how did you pick a school to study at? And if you could go back and change schools, would you still pick the same school?
Well, first I have to be loyal to my Aggies, Texas A&M class of 14, Giga Mags. And honestly, there wasn't a lot of thought into how I picked an undergrad. I looked for it was word of mouth at first that recommended A&M to me from West Texas. And then I just loved the culture, and it was cost effective for me to go there. So I figured, it was a good return on investment, might as well. I had a great time. I loved it. But I had the option to be a little bit more strategic with my master's because the undergrad at Texas A&M is not an accredited program. Most undergrads aren't. And so when I was looking for my master's, I picked University of Cincinnati for their co-op internship structure and their focus on kind of practical architecture. And that was a really good choice for me.
Okay. So I'm hearing you say a lot about school, and that seems like a lot of school. I know there's 5-year programs and 6-year programs and 4+2, and that's a lot of school to go through. Are there any alternatives if someone wants to be an architect but doesn't feel like going through 6 or 7 years of school first?
Yes, and what you're hitting on is the fact that architecture specifically requires, in most states, an accredited degree. So that would be a master's of architecture or a 5-year bachelor's at very minimum. Now, if you want to go crazy with it, there is a 7-year doctorate of architecture that's accredited out of University of Hawaii. Oh, no, might be a 9-year, not sure. I have to check in on that one. But basically, if you want to be in, for example, the state of Texas, a
Hmm.
licensed architect, you'll need one of those accredited degrees. And there's a lot of options, so do your shopping and research.
Yeah.
There are some states that don't require an accredited degree. They just require more experience than normal.
Okay.
New Mexico, I believe, Oklahoma, a few other states. If you want to, you can pursue a career in those states and then
Mhm.
transfer your licensure once you get it.
Okay.
But that requires a little bit more work and research.
Sure. So I'm going to need you to get back to me on that University of Hawaii thing
Yeah,
because I can use some sand and some sun with my education. I could get a PhD. Who knows? Um,
absolutely.
but that's a lot of information. Like, is there anywhere that you could recommend our viewers go if they want to refresh their memory or investigate these different degree programs a little bit further on their own time?
Absolutely. Because it's so complicated, there's an organization that oversees it and manages it. It's called
Okay.
NCARB, NCARB. Their website is ncarb.org, and they have a state-by-state breakdown of what the requirements are for licensure. And I think they also have links to accredited programs in each state. Your degree does not have to be in the state that you want to get licensed. You know, the
Okay.
degrees travel. But if you're studying overseas, that's another issue. There's a whole nother path for that. And in that case, or if you just have serious questions, you can reach out to what's called an architect licensing advisor.
Hmm.
Person like me who works with NCARB or, for example, the Texas Society of Architects to reference and refer people to the right information, answer questions. And so if you want to reach out to me in the state of Texas, for example, the email is ntx.axp for Architectural Experience Program. So
Okay.
ntx.axp@gmail.com.
Okay.
Or if you're in South Texas, I have a colleague, Monica, who her email is stx.axp@gmail.com.
Great. And I'll have you run back those email addresses for us at the end and maybe even drop them in the chat if you have a minute after this. But our last
Absolutely.
pair of questions, and these should be pretty familiar to you if anybody else. What does it take to be an architect, and what does it take to be a good architect?
So I covered the technicals. You need some experience interning in the industry generally. You need a degree, and you need to go through some exams. The exams are a bear, but they're worth it.
Sure.
But from a softer side of things, the intangibles, I would say to be an architect, you need to be a learner. You have to be committed to staying humble and learning as much as you can for as long as you can, because not only is there a lot to learn to catch up to the industry and be a professional, the world's always changing and the standards
Mhm.
are always improving and the expectations are always increasing.
Yeah.
And so you got to always be learning and willing to stay humble and stay hungry about what more you can learn and how you can apply it to the world.
Yeah, I cannot agree more. Being a lifelong learner is 110% one of the most important things about being an architect.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. I think we have a couple minutes here. Are there any questions from the audience? Anyone? So I know this has been a lot of information. Josh, now would be a good time for you to run back those email addresses for us too.
Absolutely. So for me, it's ntx.axp@gmail.com. And for my colleague Monica, it's stx.axp@gmail.com. And
Awesome.
we're happy to answer questions about licensure in the state of Texas, but also to refer you to resources outside of the state or study materials
Okay.
or answer questions, because I know everybody's situation feels a little different.
Sure. We have a couple questions. Oh, okay. The questions are really coming in now. So, this is from JZM Arch. What job does a recent master's graduate look for?
So you would look for they get a little fuzzy on on the titles for this, because you can't use the word architect in an unlicensed job posting. So they generally call them design professionals or um, uh,
Mm-hmm.
architectural interns. We are trying to get away from that nomenclature.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, look for something that sounds like an entry level in the profession, but specifically look for something that says 0 to 3 years experience.
Mm-hmm.
That's generally the good indication that that's the fresh out of school option.
Nice. And then we'll get one more question. And I think this is a really good one. What classes would you recommend to take at any stage in your learning career?
That's a great question. I will say one thing I regretted not taking in high school that I should have was art.
Hmm.
That
I
to this
agree.
day, my hand sketching is still terrible, and I'm
Same.
constantly embarrassed by it and
Yeah,
working to improve it. So,
same.
art is an underappreciated skill set that it took me a long time to come around to.
I'll add
Um,
photography. I'll add photography to that list as well.
yeah, photography. I would say if you have a chance to take any kind of drafting or
Hmm.
engineering courses in high school.
Definitely.
I enjoyed the engineering courses that I took. They taught me kind of a design mindset
Hmm.
that can be very helpful.
Yeah.
Um,
Ooh,
and
Ann
and then
Keeper is in Ann Keeper is in the chat, and she's recommending business and marketing and also public speaking. Both of
oh yeah,
those, especially
public
if you're going to
speaking is
be,
huge.
yeah, on the business development side, it's huge. So I see
Absolutely.
we have tons of questions popping in, but unfortunately we have a limited amount of time. So Josh, thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to chat with us, and we will work on answering some of these questions. How are we going to facilitate answering the questions? I'll figure that out, and we'll get back to you next week with that.
Might be in the comments if anybody wants to drop them in the video that I think we're going to add to our news feed after this.
Yeah, perfect. That's a perfect way. We'll answer them in the comments. Hannah will help us facilitate that. Hannah over here at HKS, who kind of manages the show behind the scenes. But now, if you guys enjoyed this, please, please, please come back next week because we have one of my favorite people here at HKS. It's Chandler Funderburg, and she is an engineer in training here. We actually have a structural engineering department, and so she's going to come back and talk to us about structural engineering. So if you have more questions, go ahead and leave them in the chat, and we will do our best to get back to you. Come back next week to see me and Chandler talk about structural engineering. And make sure that you like, follow, and subscribe to all of HKS posts on Instagram and YouTube where this video will be posted. And also share this with anybody you think needs to know more about careers in architecture and, of course, HKS. So thank you so much again, Josh.
Absolutely, my pleasure, Ilana.